All right. So my number three is I Love You Man from 2009, starring Paul Rudd, Jason Segel, Rashida Jones, directed by John Hamburg. Quick log line: friendless Peter Cleven goes on a series of man dates to find a best man for his wedding. But when his Insta bond with his new BFF puts a strain on his relationship with his fiance, can the trio learn to live happily ever after? I always love these log lines. This is probably better than what
Yeah.
we've seen in the past.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Yeah.
So I put this movie as my on my list because this movie to me represents what I went through as a brand new person moving to LA, especially after business school, which is a very social environment, not knowing that many people, and sort of the loneliness that comes with LA. You know, it's a bright starry town, but it's very hard to meet new people, very hard to make friends, very hard to literally navigate the space because it's so vast. And I think this movie at its heart kind of gets to that. I also kind of really wanted a movie that was not full of Hollywood people, because I think when the rest of the world, or even people who are in the US but not living in LA, think of LA, all they think of is the movies, which is true. But the fact is there are a lot of regular people with regular jobs that live
Hmm.
in LA that have nothing to do with Hollywood at all.
Right.
So I thought that's kind of a cool part of this movie. And also it sort of feels like it's set in a real place. Like you're going to Santa Monica, you're going to Venice, you're going to Echo Park, you're going to Santa Barbara. It sort of feels like a real place. But yeah, the storyline could have been shot anywhere, except I think the brand of people represented in this movie is very specific,
Hmm.
which is Jason Segel's character, who's sort of this almost like bum person, lives in this Venice apartment, which is, kind of a shanty place. And you keep wondering throughout the movie, how do you even make money? What job do you have?
Right.
But you're kind of interesting, but super weird at the same time. And this is a very specific kind of person that I know of, that I met in LA, many of such people. So I thought
Hmm.
that is a very specific LA thing. Also, if you live in LA, every once in a while you'll have a casual brush with a celebrity. So the whole Lou Ferrigno angle is
Right.
very interesting, right? Like he's trying to sell his house. That's very specific, but every once in a while you're at a restaurant, you'll meet somebody, or a friend of a friend has gone to an opening or something that has a celebrity, so you somehow have a connection to them. So that sort of stuff keeps happening in LA, which I thought is kind of cool and is presented in a very casual way, which I loved about this movie. Movie is very funny. It's, back when we were talking before our recording started, people used to spend this kind of money on making broad comedies. And I don't know how and where they spend $40 million. That said, it's really well done. It's tight. Everybody brings their A game. I don't think the chemistry between Rashida Jones and Paul Rudd really works. Like it's an odd relationship, but maybe that's the point in some
Yeah.
ways,
Well, that,
perhaps.
yeah.
But
I almost feel like
yeah,
they're not the romantic leads in the film.
no,
I'll get into my thoughts on it
exactly.
too.
The romance is really between Jason Segel and Paul Rudd. I think their
Yeah.
chemistry is amazing. It's
Mhm.
also a great friendship movie. Like I
Oh, for
love
sure.
how they meet up and how awkward it is. And not to draw another personal connection, this movie kind of makes me think of how you and I became friends.
Yeah.
We were kind of a blind man date.
Yeah.
And, I thought that, oh, I'll have a drink with this, so and so, and it'll be fun and fine. And instead, we spent like 3 hours talking and had such a great time. And, cut to now, it's been what, 12, 10 years, I guess.
Yeah.
So this movie sort of holds a special place in my heart for that too, because it sort of represents how you and I became friends.
Yeah.
But the message is, LA is daunting. It's hard, can feel unreal, can feel very difficult to navigate. But if you take a chance on the random weirdos that are introduced to you or come by in your life, good things can come out of that. It can get
Hmm.
stressful, it can get a little bit crazy and out there, that might be too outside your comfort zone, but in the end it actually is going to be for the better. Because really, how do you embrace a place that you move to? You embrace it, in my mind, by being with its people,
Right.
You can drive all you want in your own car and do the things that are listed on LA guidebooks or what have you, which I did as a new person. But I think you really embrace a place by meeting its weird people. And LA has a bunch of those. And I love it for that.
Yeah, yeah. I had not seen this film before.
Oh wow!
This is on the list.
This was my staple, by the way. When I lived in LA in my first few years, I've watched it like a million times.
Yeah. I have a Jason Segel always kind of rubs me the wrong way, so I just had stayed away from this film, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very funny, and sort of what I was referencing earlier too. It really is a movie about a platonic romance between two men, and it just with the strength of a friendship. And a few movies I think kind of touch on this topic, and I thought this handled it incredibly well. They had fantastic chemistry, but I think your points too on this fitting into the LA experience. And we even referenced it with the LA story. Steve Martin was a transplant. A lot of people here transplants. I don't remember exactly the backstories of these characters or whether they even talked about it, but I think a large part of the experience of being LA is coming in as a transplant. Maybe one or two people or nobody. Like when I came out here for college, I knew zero people. Absolutely no one. I mean, it was easier, I think, for me then because I was in college environment, but I didn't know anyone. So it's a lot of that same the same feelings that the characters are going through in this film too, of like just trying to find like your friend circle, the people you like hanging out with. And I think that, rarely do films kind of touch on that. And I do think this is a very unique to the experience of LA in a way, sort of more so than other places, at least that I've lived, in terms of the number of transplants that are here. And because the city is isolated in a way, things are so spread out, you're not, it's not like you go to New York and you're living in some shoebox apartment with 17 other people where you have to meet your roommates. Here, it's easy to kind of be alone. And that's why you need to start finding your friends. And, like you were referencing earlier too. Yeah, we were basically on a blind friend date, and that's how we met, which is a lot, what this movie deals with as well. So I was definitely glad I saw this. And I thought it was great. The one thing that was just really stood out to me was, he's trying to sell like Lou Ferrigno's house. And I think the movie came out in like 2009, 2010. Yep. He's got this beautiful giant mansion in the Hollywood Hills, and he's trying to sell it for like $4 million. And I was thinking like, wow, today that house would be like 10 to 12. And the shanty house that you mentioned, like that Siegel's character lives in Venice, easily $4 million.
Oh, absolutely.
Easily $4 million. That, even though it's like basically a teardown. So it's like, wow, this film is so dated because of the real estate price references. I really enjoyed this film, and I definitely can see why this, was on your list for so long. Also too, like, I don't think Jon Favreau has ever looked this good in a movie. Like, he looked healthy, svelte. Like, his character was really nasty, and he was, not a good guy in the film, but man, did he look just great.
He looked really good. And because, you have to buy, why is he with the hot blonde woman?
Right. From My Name is Earl.
Like, sure, I guess this makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, in these kind of movies, like the supporting characters are often just like props. And even though they don't have that much screen time, but for whatever reason, I think it's written really well. Like all these bit players who come in for a little bit, they really fill out the ensemble, and they matter. Like her friends, the parents, Andy Samberg, whatever is happening with his gym bros, like hilarious. But and this sort of fills in the whole atmosphere. And again, they all feel like real people to me. I feel like I met these people in LA. Every once in a while. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, actually, to contrast it to LA Story as well, which I think is a very heightened sense of reality, because that's what Martin's trying to, show LA through that. This film was very, very grounded and very realistic.
For a broad comedy, especially.
I know. Yeah. That was actually what's most surprising to me about it. And honestly, I think that's where, the one problem of like the third act conflict that is introduced, the situation, because it wasn't like heightened enough to make it believable, because I think they were trying to keep a little bit too realistic. But I liked that realistic tone that they put in the film. It felt very grounded, and that's why the humor and the love between these two guys, I think, comes across as so genuine, because the film is not like a heightened sense of reality at all. It was great. And that the part two, and there's the classic thing in a comedy of like, oh, I need to borrow some money from you, and that's usually something that ends up bad, between two friends. It's like a classic bit in films. But I loved this, like, he borrowed
So
money from
good.
his friend to buy billboards to promote his own business. That was so touching. And again, it's
So
like, that's
sweet
something you
and
see in
so
a
good.
romance and a love story, but it's between these two platonic. I was, yeah, very, very touching. Great film. Definitely recommend people checking this out. Maybe it was overlooked back in the day. I think it was a pretty decent box office hit when
$70 million.
yeah, when they were trying to make
Yeah.
Rudd and Siegel both were really hot at the time. But I definitely recommend people checking it out if they haven't seen it.
I agree. And it's sort of a good playbook for a good romantic comedy, right? Like romantic
Yeah.
comedies can be broad, but they don't have to be unreal or dumb. You can
Right.
do the work to make them real and grounded, and it'll just shine your humor,
Mhm.
So I don't know. Please take note, comedy
Yeah.
writers and
Yeah.
producers, really.
Yeah, it's much harder to do for sure. And when
Yeah.
it succeeds, I mean, it just the quality of your output is much better.
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.